Hello and welcome to Learner's Permit. In today's episode, I sit down with Peder Ebbesen and talk about his process for evaluating music. Peder works as a writer for the music publication GAFFA, where he gives album and concert reviews. And for those of you who listen to Digital North, you'll know that we like to review albums, but none of us actually have any formal experience in reviewing and critiquing music. So it was really great for me to be able to sit down with Peder, since that is literally his job, and kind of pick his brains a little bit and learn what it means to give a music review and learn from him for his process. So in this episode, we talk a lot about kind of the differences between what it means to evaluate a live concert performance as opposed to sitting down and listening to an album and coming up with your interpretation of that. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I had a lot of fun recording it. Peder, I'm glad to have you on today.
Hello.
So I want to start things off right. What song are you stuck on right now? What song do you find yourself going back to and hitting replay on your iPod?
What song am I constantly playing right now? Maybe I've been listening to Redbone for a good while by Childish Gambino. It's been on my mind for a long time. Lately I've been listening to a lot of Tyler the Creator's new album, Flower Boy. There's a song on this album called Boredom, which is pretty good, which has a Norwegian singer on it, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, something to be proud of.
Yeah, that Norwegian singer got put onto a Tyler project that's also featuring Frank Ocean.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty dope.
That's substantial.
Yeah.
I
don't know how she managed to get on that project, but I think he just found her and contacted her just like online, and it was like, do you want to maybe do a chorus on one of my songs? I think that's pretty insane.
It'd be exciting.
Yeah,
it'd be exciting
like
to get that message.
Opening your DMs and having like a message from Tyler the Creator all of a sudden, and they're like this small indie pop band from Norway. It's pretty insane.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so I wanted to pick your brains a little bit about how to review an album, because in Digital North, us friends get together and we review albums, but I personally don't really read album reviews very often. Yeah. I don't really know kind of the structure of how it goes, and it seems to me like there are kind of like two main schools of evaluating music, right? You can do it kind of in a holistic way, where you take the album as a whole and think of how it subjectively makes you feel. And then I guess like the other school of like reviewing an album would be really trying to deconstruct it and look at
dissect the album.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what do you think is more useful, or what do you find yourself doing more, or how do you like to review an album personally?
Personally, I think I'm definitely doing the more holistic approach by talking about and writing about how the album makes me feel. And how I think my reviews are more subjective than others, but because I think it's more important to communicate to people how the album like perceives me, or how it makes me feel while I'm listening to it.
Right.
So most people, there's like, okay, like you said, there are different schools of thought when you review an album. Most people, they like compare it to like the artist or the musician's like previous work, and they say it sounds like this and that, it's different from this or that project, or it reminds me of this other artist. For example, if I'm talking about Led Zeppelin record, and someone like a new rock band has like emulated Led Zeppelin record, it sounds like Black Dog by Led Zeppelin, for example. They use the same chords, and people, that's a really popular way to review an album, just comparing it to other things. But I don't think that's very useful, because I think an album should be judged by its own merit. So
kind of irrespective of what's going on.
In like a vacuum of like its own. So if Alt J comes out with a new album, I don't think it should be compared necessarily. It can be compared to what they've been doing like earlier, but I think it should be reviewed in its own right. So what I do is I just listen to the album in like, I like to listen to it first on headphones to like get like the whole like sound image, almost like all the nuances, like all the instruments, the vocal, and really like get a little technical first, and then I put it on like a loudspeaker or like a monitor and just lay back and find out how it makes me feel and what songs I'm drawn to and what are like the highlights of an album, because it's a lot of albums are just like a combination of multiple singles, it feels like, so it's just a selection of songs put into one file.
Yeah.
But other albums are more like they have like a theme, or they have like a structure that it needs to be listened to in the context of the album. So you have to hear the whole album to really understand the meaning of each song. And like, for example, if the bridge is connected to the next song or the outro is connected to the last song, whereas, for example, Kendrick Lamar like to do like this almost like a
narrative.
Yeah, it's a narrative. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's more stylistic. It's more based around a central theme. Or, for example, on Pimp a Butterfly had like a poem.
Yeah.
He was gradually filling in.
Yeah.
Like through the record.
Uh-huh.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I would listen to Pimp a Butterfly in its entirety. But for example, Good Kid, Mad City, I might just listen to a couple of songs and get the same like enjoyment from it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there really seems, I think that I obviously I agree with you on the idea that some albums are better suited as like a cohesive unit, and some are just kind of singles driven.
Yeah.
For instance, when I think of like The Moon and Antarctica by Modest Mouse,
Yeah.
I don't really enjoy any of those songs on their own.
Yeah.
But as an album, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, you really feel like the ebb and flow of it.
Yeah.
And if you contrast that to something like Run the Jewels 3, I mean, there's almost no cohesion in the album. It's full of really fun, fast-paced singles.
Yeah. But they work really good on their own. It's not a conceptual album. They work like, for example, Legend Has It by Run the Jewels. It's like, it works really well as a single.
Yeah.
But you don't need like the context of the album to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a really big difference between, and that stuff happens like within every genre right now. So it's not just hip hop, not just electronica or indie or pop or rock or whatever. There's like conceptual albums within every genre.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
It seems to me, and I'm not sure if this is true, but from my listening, it seems that specifically within like hip hop and rap, you have like a really clear-cut like skit or a transitional song or like a structural cohesion that like keeps the album together.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes in rock albums, and if I'm going back to like to Wincing the Night Away by the Shins, they have a song called Pam Berry, which
I saw the Shins at AF Festival actually.
I know it. But like on Pam Berry, James Mercer said that that song was basically like a palate cleanser as like an intermission song between the first half of the album and the second half. And it seems to me that like specifically within hip hop, you get this really like they take the idea of an intermission song or a transitional song and really stylize it and make it their own. Like I'm thinking of, things like DMX on It's Dark and Hell is Hot. He has those skits. And then like Tech Nine likes to have skits on his albums too. And that's something that it seems is a little bit lacking in other genres. Have you seen skits like that in other
definitely
genres?
Especially like voice recordings and like artists talking with their mom on the phone, like Frank Ocean does.
Yeah, or like Lil Dicky.
Yeah, Lil Dicky have like these talks or these skits or recordings of people talking about even like the theme of the album. For example, Kendrick Lamar has like these parts where people like philosophize around like the subject matter.
Yeah.
If he's talking about Black Lives Matter movement or whatever he's talking about. and it works in the context of the album as an interlude or an outro or an intermission. And those are like an integral part of the album. In other genres, it seems like they rely more on like a song working more like on its own and not relying on like skits and interludes. So like some electronic albums have like shorter songs, for example, who are like just instrumentals, who are meant to like bring you into the record or work as an overture to a different part of the record.
Yeah.
Like for example, a lot of like rock or alt rock albums have like a break in the middle, where if it's like a stylistic change or something, or this marks like the end of that part of the album. Like a B side, if they still operate an A and B side, like a vinyl record, they might have like a track that takes you to the other side of the record. Yeah, definitely.
And so maybe I'm just like waxing poetic here, but it seems like in a lot of ways, if I'm going back to like the Moon and Antarctica, I can't really think of many interlude songs, but it really seems that they have this concept, and instead of directly stating it the way that Kendrick Lamar would, or the way that like Lil Dicky would, instead it's kind of more abstract, and you kind of have to really kind of just feel it instead of kind of being guided through it the way that some other genres are. And I know that like rap in general is a lot more direct of a genre than others, especially if you're getting into like old school rap and like less like stylistic.
Wu-Tang Clan was also really big into skits, and they had like the whole martial arts kung fu Shaolin thing as like a common theme throughout all their albums. So that's something. And MF Doom have, for example, like comic books and superheroes and villains and stuff like that, which is like a red line between all the records and all their albums. And it helps feel, it makes you feel like immersed into a project more, I think, if they like to create their own like universe within like a record. And I don't feel like it's a necessity sometimes, like in this era where people are making playlists all the time and curating playlists and are more like occupied by making like songs that go together in some other way. I don't feel it's really. It's hard to. What I was saying. I lost my train of thought. I really lost my train of thought.
Well, to pivot quickly, for an album, for a review that you're writing for an album, do you find yourself really looking into how much cohesion an album has? Like, do you when you're reviewing an album, does your rating of that album get influenced by how cohesive it is as a unit? Like do you really care whether or not it really nails its concept, or really like nails like a genre specific sound that you're hoping for?
If I'm like reviewing like a folk record, like Fleet Foxes, for example, if they're like hitting the folk like marks. Yeah,
but also like overall for like an album's construction, would something, again, if we go back to like Good Kid, Mad City, and we have those interludes or outros where, you know, people are leaving messages on Kendrick Lamar's phone, and that's where you get the story told. Do you treat that as almost like a higher quality of an album than something that is kind of singles driven, like all of the Run the Jewels albums? Or do you kind of see them as like two very different ways to approach an album?
The latter, definitely, because I feel like you don't have to have those skit parts and those parts to make the album great. And music is so subjective, but what makes an album great, how it makes you feel, is how you what kind of enjoyment you get from it. I get a different kind of enjoyment from listening to Pimp a Butterfly than, for example, the Run the Jewels record, because it's a different way to approach music in a way, even though it exists within the same genre. I think it depends on what you want to get out from from the record.
Yeah.
If you're going into Run the Jewels project wanting to experience narrative or skits or be immersed, I think you're going to be disappointed. But if you're looking to listen to some excellent produced hip hop and some really clever lyricism, I think you're going to be like happy with what you're getting from that project. Like in the same way, for example, Kendrick's new album Damn was conceptual, but less in a way that Pimp a Butterfly was.
Yeah, it was lacking a narrative.
Yeah,
backbone.
it was lacking. It was more like song driven, but he had like this element where he wound the album back at the end of the record, and then led back to the first song, and then he has like this small like skit or like a poem that he reads at the start of the album, and when he winds the last song back, the first song makes sense just because of the context of the last song on the album, and that makes it more exciting to listen to the album for a second time.
Yeah,
because then you understand that there was a red line, but you didn't see it until the end. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I think it's when they put that much thought into creating an album, because otherwise you might as well call it like a playlist. If you're like Drake did on the More Life album, which I thought was a pretty big cop out for not making a cohesive project, as you said, but so he just put like a pile of songs into an album and called it a playlist, because he knew that it wasn't any cohesiveness, because of like it was all different genres. He was like working with like grime songs, and he had like Americana songs and dancehall and just pure hip hop and like more singing, and just put it like into like a melting pot of an album. And it only worked half of the time, also because the album got way too long. It lasted almost like 2 hours or something like that, and it was like 23 songs, which I think is a way too many songs for an album, even a conceptual one.
So what would be a good length for you? Well, what's the length of the album which is a sweet spot for you? Because in Digital North, one of the guys who I have the podcast with, Nate Sand, always talks about how he prefers a shorter album. He thinks that like an album without any fat on it is what he really wants. He wants a clean, concise kind of like just group of songs that fits whatever the band was going through during that time period. Yeah,
I think I definitely agree with him that a shorter project is more concentrated, and that means that every song, every cut on the album is normally of a higher quality. You can make it a shitty album that is like 7 songs long, so it really depends on like the artist and how the album was created. But I think most of the time I'd be more inclined to like an album when I see that before I listen to it. If the runtime is like well over an hour, I would say that the artist didn't spend enough time like deselecting songs to be put on the album. I think like a part of making an album is like being selective and being a little nitpicking in what, because most of the time artists make way too much music to put on an album. But it's like a part of like the art of it is being able to select which songs make the album, which one to drop, which one to cut, which one to scratch like all together. And if you're going to release like a B-sides album, for example, you can put them on there, or like a live session or a studio session album. But I think it's important to be concise and not be just, because it's changed also because of the whole streaming culture. So like streaming sales and royalties are based on like the total amount of streams a record gets, and if you put 20, 18, 20, 30 songs on an album, like if you're a popular artist, you will like per definition get more streams from that album just because of the volume of the songs.
Sure.
Like for example, the new Drake album is like the most streamed album on Spotify right now, and that's only because both like the singles who got dropped like ahead of time, like what's it called, One Dance, for example, and Fake Love, and like all these like big like bangers. They racked up tons of streams, like on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Tidal, and they decided just to put them on the album because the amount of streams would get included in the album. So that means like it seems like the album sale almost got like inflated by the single.
Sure.
So he went platinum just a couple of weeks, or like a week or 2 weeks after the album dropped.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's really changed the way artists think about approaching a project, especially within hip hop.
So I'm pretty out of the loop when it comes to the music industry now, I guess, in terms of like marketing and sales. Can an album go platinum based on streams?
Yeah.
Or so it's not even just like total album purchases.
No, because Billboard changed the game almost. They made I think it was in 2014. You may have to check me up on that, but they made it so that album sales count towards total album sales.
Album streams.
Album streams, yeah.
Sales.
Count towards sales.
Okay.
So if you are a really popular artist on Spotify, on Tidal, and stuff like that, but you're not selling as much like in digital like downloads or album sales or vinyl, like your streams will count towards how popular or how like much money you actually earn on that album. And it's more important for the artists who are already being put onto like the Billboard charts, like for like a small indie electronica act with like 20,000 streams on Spotify. It won't matter how they are approaching like the numbers or how they sell albums, but for an artist like Kendrick Lamar or Taylor Swift or stuff like that, it means that it will put them like higher up on the Billboard charts based on not just album sales and concert, but on streams.
Now streaming too.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do artists get most of their revenue from? Is it touring still?
It's still touring and merchandise and like promotional things. So album sales is just like a small fraction. So I think it's really good that touring is still like the most lucrative thing for artists to do, because it should be. You should put your album on tour. You should play your music in front of people. Yeah,
it's probably good for fans too.
Yeah, it's good for fans. So but it's harder for like new acts getting like traction if they're not getting high streams on SoundCloud, for example, or if they put their album on Spotify and they're not getting high numbers. It's harder for them to get noticed. So it's still, for example, if me as a journalist or a media site or a blog to pick up like underground, small, like up and coming artists because they need like that kind of attention to be able to eventually get those high numbers. And so I think it's hard to blow up in a way, but you can also be very lucky if someone picks you up on like a blog or someone puts you in a music video. Or for example, lately Kylie Jenner on Snapchat has been like, when she's filming herself and doing whatever she does, she's had like a rap song from like an artist in the background, and the artists who are being played in her car or in her bathroom or whatever are getting huge numbers.
Yeah, they get a bump from that.
They get a huge bump from just like Kylie Jenner playing them in the background. She needs to
start getting paid for that then.
Yeah, I think she does actually. So yeah, a lot of like these small new like mumble rap artists, for example, have really gotten traction from being exposed on other social media platforms. Sure. Yeah. Sure. I'm sure
that changes the game a bit. So going back to you reviewing albums, you said you like to begin with listening in your headphones first, and then you like to just listen to it on some speakers.
Yeah.
How many times do you listen to an album before you really begin like writing about it or like giving a review?
When I come to a conclusion, or like do the rating, or
when do you make up your mind about it?
That also really depends on the album. for example, a project like Run the Jewels,
Mm-hmm.
if we're going back to that, I know like right away if I like it or not, like from just one listen, because it depends on like the beat, the like the production, like the lyrics, like the whole, but it's much more instantaneous, the feeling I get from that kind of project. I know right away if it's like a 3 or 4 or 5 or a 6. But for example, a project like something a little bit more experimental, like Sophie and Stevens.
We got some cops in the background here.
Something is happening. Should we wait before they...
Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. For example, a more electronic-driven project it's harder to come to grips with right away, because if it's more conceptual or the sound is more abstract, you have to really think harder about what makes you enjoy it or not, and what about it that you enjoy. For example, have you heard about Sophie and Stevens?
Yeah.
Yeah. He just came out, or a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, he came out with this project called Planetarium, which is like a collaboration project with a couple of different artists, where the concept of the album is the Milky Way, and each song on the album is named after like a planet or like a sky phenomenon, like a black hole or like stars, and every song is based around that theme. So for example, Mars is like this really mythology driven, like heavy drums, like war themed song.
Sure. And that also goes back to like Mars being a god of war.
Yeah, god of war.
And
So they really bring in, like in the lyrics and in the instrumentals, they bring in mythology and really abstract instruments and a lot of vocal harmonies and chorus and stuff like that. And for example, a song like The Moon, for example, is really mellow, it's really chilled down, and the vocals are really like ethereal and full of reverb, and each song is so different that you have to like really take your time, like almost like digesting like the album.
Sure.
Yeah, so that really took me a long time before writing. I gave it a really good score, but I think I listened to it for like a week before I like decided of what I was going to give it. And sometimes you get an album really far ahead of time from like a record label or a promotional manager or something like that, so you can really take your time like listening to an album and like really coming to grips with it, how you like it and why you like it or why you don't like it. But sometimes that is especially true for like hip-hop records. You normally get it just a day before release or on the day, so it's getting a little bit more rushed, and you have to approach that review in a different way. So a lot of indie artists and small bands and more abstract projects, they give out their copies like way ahead of advance normally. For example, new Fleet Foxes album, I had that sitting on my computer for like 2 or 3 weeks before it was released. So it really helped me come to a conclusion like fast.
Yeah. And I guess that makes sense for, I guess what I was thinking about for hip hop, but really for other bands too, is that it's pretty important to know not only the concept that the artist is trying to like really capture in that album, but also kind of the history of that culture and what's going on with their contemporaries. Because for me, like I miss a lot of like hidden disses in rap music, because it just doesn't occur to me like who they're referencing. And there's a YouTube channel I really like called The Company Man with Justin Hunt, I think, and he covers hip hop extensively, and he talks about a lot of like the
like rap beefs and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, he talks about the rap industry predominantly, but he kind of gets into what what specific lyrics mean about specific people. Like I'd heard that "Humble" by Kendrick Lamar is supposedly a diss track about Drake.
Yeah,
and
I've
like,
heard that too.
Yeah, like I would have no idea.
No.
I would have just assumed he just wants people to be humble.
Yeah, that was also I also wrote that because I reviewed them for Gaffa where I'm reviewing music, so I didn't put any emphasis on like the whole culture around like that record, because I don't think it's that important to notice like I don't think rap beefs and stuff like that. I think it's cool that they can still do it and be a little bit ballsy and speak what's on their mind, but I don't think it should affect how you listen to the song.
Sure. But then in some ways, I really enjoy knowing about the history that went into the album. For instance, Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. I mean, when I reviewed that for Digital North, I dug into the history of it quite a bit, and I was so surprised to hear about all the struggles that the band had, and the fact that they were like cheating on their spouses with each other, and then they're all like doing drugs together, and like they wanted to credit their coke dealer in the credits. I mean, just like knowing about all the insanities surrounding the history of that album, and then still the fact that it's one of the like best-selling albums ever. It's crazy to me that they're able to pull through, and so in some ways I really do appreciate knowing about the history around it, but it depends.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but anyway, so last week you were at Øyafestivalen. Øyafestivalen in Oslo, the Island Festival. And the festival had people like Pixies, Migos, Lana Del Rey, the XX, the Shins, Feist, Sampha, Danny Brown.
It's a pretty insane lineup.
Yeah, it was a crazy lineup. I'm pretty envious of the fact that you got to go there.
It's pretty cool.
So, who were some of the standout performances for you? Who were you just blown away by?
Oh, there were tons of acts that surprised me. Like the first day on the festival, we had like the worst rain Oslo have seen for like a year. So it was pouring like hell. It was like you couldn't stand with your mouth open, fear of drowning. It was insane. So that put like a damper on like the whole day. But what really surprised me was how many people who showed up anyway for supporting the artists, and like the closing headliner that day was Lana Del Rey.
Okay.
And like the whole like main stage was packed of people.
Sure.
Even though it was raining.
And was it like
it was
muddy,
like a monsoon. It was
gross.
Yeah, people were slipping, and people had like ladies had makeup running down their face, and people were all wearing like rain ponchos. But people were all still really happy and seemed really just like in awe of like the artists performing. So I would say that Lana was like the first one who blew me away in some way, because her whole aesthetic and her whole formula of doing a show, or her persona like on her own, she is really putting emphasis on like the 50s, 60s Hollywood era.
Okay. So
she seems like a Marilyn Monroe type of person who she seems really like she doesn't belong in 2017. She seems like an artist that should be performing in like a small jazz club in like a shady part of New York, and she has this really ethereal sound and a really comfortable vocal that makes you sad and nostalgic at the same time. And all her songs is about like things that used to be good and how things were, and it kind of traps you in like this nostalgia bubble. And on the back of the stage, she showed like old like Super 8 and home videos of like young people skating and having like smoking in the park and enjoying summer and kissing each other like a summer fling or something like that.
Cool.
So she totally immerses you in this world she's created for herself, and she's also really loved by all her fans, which I wouldn't say I was surprised by, but people were like crying at the front row, and she went down to like the photo pit in front of the stage and like let people like hug her and give her a kiss her on the cheek, and she spent like 4 minutes of the show just hugging everyone at the front row.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, but other than that, some highlights, like when the rain was when the rain was really pouring down, I saw Danny Brown at the smaller stage, and like the atmosphere and the energy at that show was like one of the craziest ones I've experienced in a long time. It was raining. I was wearing like mud boots and a poncho and like a hood, and people were smoking and drinking and pushing themselves towards the stage and mosh pitting, and people were falling down. I saw someone with like a nosebleed, and someone had like their face just getting smashed into the mud, but they were just happy to be there. So they were raging, and he was just smiling because he saw that the weather was so bad, but he also saw like the crowd being so grateful for him performing. So he had like this crazy energy about him.
I imagine.
Yeah, and he performed like all his songs from like the oldest ones to the newest ones, and so people were just like getting more hype like towards the end of the show. And then he just said like, "Thank you, Oslo," and then he just vanished from the stage. And that was it. And that was just the first day. That was the highlights from the first day. After that, the weather became so much better. It was just sun the rest of the festival.
Nice.
So yeah, so the Shins was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the Shins specifically because I'm a huge Shins fan, and I really like Heartworms, their newest album.
Yeah, they played a lot from that one, but they also played like new slang and some of like the crowd pleaser songs. Yeah, there was also a full crowd at that show, and it was a lot of people were singing. It was like the epiphany of like festival like mood. Everyone was smiling, drinking beer, like waving their arms, listening to like really easy to get by indie rock. It was really something.
Oh, cool, man. Oh, that's so cool.
And also Sampha, I think Sampha was probably like the best singer on the festival.
Sure. He
played in this really big tent, and like when at the bottom of the festival. And he has this incredible control over his voice. He can go into like these really high registers and doing like this incredible falsetto. Then he can go down to like this really soulful, deep vocal while playing piano and walking around on stage. And his voice is something else.
Yeah, and I imagine like being in a big tent would almost be better for the type of performance he would be good at than in a big main stage. Because he seems really intimate. Yeah,
and even though it was several thousand people there, it seemed like a living room concert because it seemed so intimate. And the illusion of the tent like really isolated everything that was going on inside. That was also pretty cool.
Yeah, that's nice to see.
I also saw like snippets of the XX while I was going to another show to review, but the XX was pretty great as well. They sound like almost identical as they do on the album live.
Okay, cool.
It sounds so tight and everything, like from the chorus to the like deep bass, and the electronic part sounds like just like they're performing the album like in perfect way.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
So I was thinking about the fact that when you record an album, you have, or not when you record an album, when you review an album, you have several days. You feel like you almost have all the time in the world to sit down and listen to it a few different ways, really get a feel for it, play a track on repeat a couple of times, note the lyrics, write down how you feel about it. But when you're reviewing a concert and live performance, you pretty much have to have one go at it. How does that change your way of reviewing a concert?
Like, firstly, you have like a really short deadline, especially on a festival, because if it's a concert that's going on during the day, they want you to finish it like just after the concert is done. If you're reviewing a headliner, you can either review the concert just after, like during the night, or it can be released the morning after. So you really have to take like really heavy mental notes from the concert. Sometimes I just bring my phone and just put down some quick thoughts on my phone.
Sure.
But most of the time I see a lot of music reviewers, especially at this show I was last night, where everyone was sitting because it was a little bit more intimate. People were sitting on their computer and on their phone, just seeming that like they were not paying attention to the concert, even though they probably were, but they it seems way too much of a job for them, like a 9-to-5 job. I think that's pretty sad. So I try to go to the concert like as a festival goer, or as someone that's going to a concert, dancing, singing along if there's a band I know, and I really try to get the full experience. And I think I'm still able to write like a comprehensive review, even though I'm not like super concentrated on my phone or on my computer.
Yeah. So
I like to be part of the crowd and like clapping, being energetic when I feel like it. And if there's something, if I'm reviewing a concert that I don't like, I like think about what makes it bad. Is it the sound? Is the vocals? Are they just a bad performer? Stuff like that. And then right after the concert is finished, we usually go to like this press tent, and then I just write. I usually start just both album reviews and concert reviews with like the headline or like the byline, because it really, for me, it sets the entire mood of the album, and it sets like how I'm going to approach the rest of the review. So especially on concert reviews, I put in the headline, how it made me feel, or like a quick just sentence of how like the concert was, how it was perceived like by me at that time. So for example, in the Lana Del Rey show, I wrote down that she brought from like feelings of nostalgia and sadness and beauty at the same time. Yeah. And that was just like my headline. And then I what do you say? I abbreviated on like the whole headline in the review, so I just explained what I meant like in the headline. Yeah, you unpacked it a little bit. I unpacked it. Yeah. Okay. So that's basically how I approach a concert review. I guess that's a difficult line to walk across, right, or walk on, because you have on one hand really trying to deconstruct what in that moment you care about, and I'm sure the people on their laptops were really just trying to capture everything. Yeah. But then you also have like the idea that a concert goer is there for the experience, or many are. So you really kind of want to be able to. You have to experience what that feels like to just watch a performance. Definitely, and that's like my ethos, or that's like my thought when I go to concert and when I review an album. What is more interesting for the reader to know is it which songs were performed, because a lot of concert reviewers, they just like write down which songs were performed when, and just like a set list of the songs. And he performed, for example, the Shins performed New Slang towards the end of the set, and then they write, it was a pretty good performance, maybe they should do like another encore song, for example. And I don't think that's interesting for a reader to know which songs were played. People are putting way too much emphasis on that, or if the guitarist was playing the same solo from like an album, or if like the drummer was paying attention, or how like the band was, if they seemed to enjoy themselves or stuff like that. I think it's more, I think I'm writing a review to either like mirror what the ones who were at the concert felt during that time, or if I felt the same as they did, because people aren't always on the same page when it comes to reviews. People can have like a total different perception of how the concert went. Some people, if I, for example, review a concert to like a 3 or a 4, like a mediocre like rating, They can go like, oh, this was a easy 6, or like this was a straight A. Why didn't you see what I saw? And yeah, it's interesting because it's so subjective that you have to be subjective yourself to really be a reviewer. I don't think it's such a thing called an objective review of any kind.
And you kind of have to, again, decide whether or not you want to give information, like just giving like the set list, or if you want to give your interpretation, right? If you really want to.
But you have to give some information as well. You should like mention like which songs. I usually mention which songs I thought was the best ones from the performance. And it's important to mention like some of the songs that were played, and for example, people like to know which songs they open with, for example.
Sure.
People like or which one was the encore, for example. But I think I'm writing both like album reviews and music reviews for people who weren't around for that concert, to like almost experience in words how it was like being there. So that's why I have to like write on like in like a holistic way, or like an emotional way too. I like to write how I was feeling at that time and how I perceived it, and I think people appreciate that more than just being really dissecting and analytical about it. I don't think that's interesting to read.
Yeah, it's like reading a Wikipedia page.
Yeah,
something like that. It's just the information.
Yeah,
it's data.
It's not interesting for me at all.
Yeah, I can understand that. And so, do things like stage presence and like the type of light show that an artist has,
it definitely impacts the show. Yeah, in a big way. For example, I reviewed Ryan Adams, which is like a really good musician, and his like band was really, really good, but his stage presence was awful. He seems like he was just clocking in for like work.
Sure.
His work was being like this really tired rock musician, which was also singing. So he just got on stage, performed, said like thank you, and we're gonna play our next song. It's called No No No. And they played that song. People like applauded, but he treated the whole thing that like it was a 9-to-5 job. He didn't seem to get any enjoyment from it at all.
He wasn't like an entertainer. He was just
not at all.
Performer.
People don't need to be entertainers for you to get immersed in the concert. They can be like conceptual in a way, or they can have a really, really interesting lighting. And sometimes artists who are more mysterious, they don't say anything at all. They just perform the song, but it's almost like a theater performance. It's so constructed in advance. They have like a narrative through the concert, like you're experiencing a show, not just a band performing a bunch of songs.
Right.
They have like set pieces or lighting or formation or dancing or elements that make up like the whole concert.
Okay, we are back. So
where were we?
We're talking about the ways that Okay, so we're back.
Yeah.
We were talking about the ways that a light show and stage presence can really affect like the overall aesthetic of the performance, and how it's important to kind of take into account the fact that you're standing in front of thousands of people, so every little kind of insecurity you have when you're on stage is really going to show through. Yeah,
definitely. And especially like on big stages that you should have like these big screens that like film like the artist through the concert. So if your hand is shaking or something like that, it really gets highlighted.
Oh, you see it.
Yeah, so you see like someone holding the mic and you see like their hand going like this. And in a way, it's good to see like if there's like a really big artist, to see he's still nervous or still feels like excitement going onto a big stage performing for thousands of people. I imagine I would be ridiculously nervous, like performing for like 10,000 people.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but definitely it's like stage presence and the lighting and the sound quality and all these like exterior elements play a huge part in how the concert is perceived, not just like the vocals and the instrumental or the band in itself. So one of the best concerts at Øya Festival was a Norwegian rapper called Lars Vaular, which is a rapper from Bergen. And when he got on stage, they first show like a video of him running to the festival wearing a wedding dress. And he's a man.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were in doubt. And then like the video ended and he appeared center stage wearing a wedding dress and wearing these really kitschy sunglasses. And like the back of his dress like turned out to be like a backdrop, like a white backdrop on stage, and these guys in like wearing like these really tight like spandex outfits and ski masks, they like pulled like the whole backdrop, the white backdrop of his dress, and made like a white wall behind him to form the stage. And they pulled all the lights like up like along the sides of the dress, and he was wearing like this really low cut dress, and you can see like he's like tattoos and everything. You can see like everything, and he was rapping for the entire like duration of that. And that's like the song after, he was like levitated in the wedding dress by like wires. So these guys was like wiring him up, and he was like floating.
Oh shit, that would have been such a cool experience.
Yeah, at the center stage in a wedding dress. And then he was like let down, and like smoke appeared, and then he came back in like just Adidas like jumpsuit, like a more standard rapper.
Oh, that's so dope.
And he had a bunch of like featuring artists and really cool like laser and smoke shows and stuff like that. And it definitely makes a difference. Both in a negative way and a positive way, because you can also go really over the top, and the sound quality or like the performance itself is really lackluster, but the show was pretty cool to watch. Most of like a lot of electronic dance music people do that, where the show is really extravagant and not nice to look at, but maybe the content isn't that good.
Right.
So
you have to take them together.
Yeah.
Really, when it's live.
Yeah. It really, it's just something to maybe just put some little extra on it. Yeah. You can definitely have a perfect show with you and a guitar and a mic, but it really depends on the artist. You can be like transported by like if someone like Sample, for example, at some point just had like a single spotlight and a piano and him performing like a really slow ballad, and it was absolutely beautiful. And
whereas if you had Sampha in a wedding dress floating on stage, it'd be a little off-putting.
It'd be off-putting. Could be awesome, but you definitely have to put some thought in how you are going to appear on stage.
Yeah,
definitely, and it makes a difference. People are paying for more at a festival or a concert than someone just performing songs. I think that's the only thing about the XX show, for example, because when they perform, they almost just perform their album just on stage, and it's really cool because they're so talented and the sound is really good and it sounds really tight, but it doesn't add anything extra. You don't get the incentive to. They could have just played like the record on a really big sound system on the stage.
Right.
So I think it's important for people performing live to bring something extra than just their material.
Yeah.
Maybe just change their songs. Maybe do like a live version of the song that's different from the one on the album. To really make it feel like an experience that you were lucky to be able to see and participate. So you can see, you didn't go to the Øya concert, or you should have been there because
it's a one time experience.
Maybe they cover a song, or they brought like another like a featuring artist from the album on stage. For example, on the Young Thug show, he brought the Migos on stage with him to perform like one song, Bad and Bougie, and stuff like that. And they were just performing on another stage, so they like ran to his show to join him on stage, and the people like went crazy on that show.
Yeah.
So definitely there are multiple elements that bring like a concert together, and you have to put that into account when you do the review as well. So yeah, but do you feel like when I give a rating, for example, I definitely feel while watching the show what the rating is going to be like. So usually I know the rating before I write the review, and that's also true for album reviews actually.
Right.
But in album reviews it could be different, because some albums they take some time to digest, you know. For example, if you listen to what were you mentioning earlier, the electronic
I was talking about Modest Mouse.
Modest Mouse, yeah. For example, an album like that, it may take some more time than a day or a couple of listens to really understand in a way.
Definitely for that one for me.
Yeah. I have this one electronic producer I listen to a lot called Trentemøller, which is like a Danish electronic producer. These albums are really complex and overwhelming, and the sound is really big and challenging. So for an album like that, I wouldn't necessarily enjoy it right away, because I hadn't fully understood it. It's the same way, for a little bit more accessible example, the new Frank Ocean album Blonde, which I now think is like a masterpiece almost. But at the time of release, I thought it was really hard to understand it, because it was so much more abstract than his previous record.
Yeah.
So I almost didn't like it as much right away. Or maybe if I was going to review it, I would have given it like a 4 or 5 maybe, because I didn't have the time to immerse myself in the project. But now it would have been an easy 6 or like a top rating for me, because I've almost like fallen for the project. So often, or some project I would really like to maybe give out like a second opinion album review, like a revised review almost.
Yeah.
For example, the new Fleet Foxes album was an example of that, because I gave it a 4 because it was really hard to review. But as I was listening to it more and more, I started to enjoy it more and more. So if I was going to review it now, I would probably give it a better rating. And that happens, and tastes change, and albums or artists I loved when I was younger, for example, I can't stand right now.
Sure.
For example,
AC/DC is an example for
Metallica,
me.
stuff like people had like their rock period. I enjoyed Linkin Park when I was really young. Now I can't stand Linkin Park because it's trash.
Yeah.
But I think also like you get some sort of like a musical maturity almost.
I think
like
so.
The more you listen to music, the more your ear matures, I think. And some people, they get stuck in this adolescent period, or in like a young adult period.
Yeah, just get too nostalgic almost.
Yeah,
for the way it made them feel before.
Yeah, and some people, they aren't as exploratory when it comes to music. They stick to what they know. They don't enjoy exposing themselves to different things. And so if you have been listening to Kings of Leon, for example, for all these years, maybe you would rather listen to a Kings of Leon record than maybe checking out Alabama Shakes or another like stadium rock band, which is within the same genre but it's a different band.
Yeah.
I think that's true for all genres of music, really. But I think it's really important to challenge yourself and almost always try to explore and never settle for something you know, when you also know that there's thousands of songs being put out every day, every week.
Yeah, I mean every album is just like a drop in the ocean. Yeah. Really, I mean there's so much out there to listen to.
You can never like listen to all the music in the world, but you can certainly try. And yeah, like one of my, not philosophy, but what I strive to do is have a song that goes with everything in life almost. That if someone is going through something or says something or something happens, I have the perfect song to put on.
Yep.
So
set the mood.
Yeah, my goal is to have like a perfect song for every like facet of life.
Yeah.
Almost.
Well, it's like when you learn about like an idea or a feeling that you're trying to describe, when you realize that there's like a school of philosophy based off of just that, or like either great works of literature which will be able to describe that thing more eloquently, hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. And it's nice. I think it's a nice feeling to know that kind of like the human condition that you feel in any given moment is something that people have felt forever, and there's a lot of kind of reinforcement for the idea that feeling is okay and appropriate and healthy and normal, and I think that's nice.
And also going back to what music like makes you feel and how big of a part of it should be in your own life, because I always question people who aren't exploring new music or are using time on music. For example, they just play the music on the radio, or they're satisfied with just listening to what's popular, what's popping, what's on like the top charts. And they don't want to explore anything or find music of their own. And I think that's pretty sad, because for me, music is such a big part of my personality that, for example, when people say, "Oh, Peder, you have really great taste in music," or "I really enjoy that song that you sent to me," or if you meet someone that has similar taste in music as you do, it's almost like they're saying, "Oh, I enjoy your personality."
Yeah, and I like your taste.
I really like your personality, and because so much of music is such a big part of my life that without it, it'd be like a half-life almost if I didn't have that. For example, going deaf is like my number one worst nightmare.
Put on those headphones. Put on those earplugs when you're going to concerts.
Watch my tinnitus.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate being able to interview you. It's great. Thanks, man.
It's really awesome.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Learner's Permit. And just as a heads up, you can now download all of our podcast episodes of both Learner's Permit and Digital North, as well as stream both of them by visiting us at curiousmagnet.com. And make sure to stay up to date on our new releases by following us on Facebook at The Curious Magnet. We'll also continue to release all of our episodes on YouTube, so if you prefer, you can watch us that way. Thanks so much, and stay curious.